South Korean MPs have begun impeachment proceedings against President Yoon Suk-yeol after thwarting his shock move to impose martial law. The Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, one of the country's major workers' unions, gathered in Seoul to call on President Yoon to resign. Members of South Korea's workers' union have announced an indefinite general strike, denouncing Yoon's actions as unconstitutional and undemocratic. Meanwhile, the South Korean parliament has imposed a ban on all defense officials and police from entering the National Assembly building.
늦은 밤 우리 국민들은 정말 깜짝 놀랐습니다. 전쟁이라도 난 줄 알았습니다. 그런데 그것이 아니라 윤석열 정권이 대통령이 자신의 정치적 기반이 약해진 것을 계기로 비상계엄을 선포했고 민의의 전당이라 할 수 있는 국회에 군부대를 투입했습니다. 이것은 민주사회에서 도저히 용납될 수 없는 일이라 생각합니다. 그래서 밤사이 많은 국민들이 국회에서 비상계엄을 해제시키기 위해서 함께 싸웠고 오늘 아침부터는 각계각층의 인사들이 함께 모여서 범국민적 항쟁을 만들어보자라는 결의를 가지고 이 자리에 섰습니다. 이 시간부터 노동자들은 파업에 돌입할 것입니다.
Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has told reporters that Tokyo would keep its eye on events in Seoul. The Prime Minister said that Japan is doing everything it can to ensure the safety of Japanese nationals in the country. PM Ishiba reiterated that he is watching the developments closely.
他国の内戦についてあれこれ申し上げる立場にはございません。しかしながら昨晩の戒厳令発出以来、私どもとして特段のかつ重大な関心を持って注視をいたしておるところであります。注視をいたしておるところであります。在留邦人の安全につきましては、領事メールを在留邦人の安全につきましては、領事メールを直ちに発出する等々においてできる限りの対応を取っております。
France's minority government looks as if it is in its final hours as opposition lawmakers from the left and the far right have vowed to topple Prime Minister Michel Barnier's cabinet. A no-confidence vote is scheduled for later today at Parliament in the wake of a divisive budget debate with a great chance of being successful. Bangladesh summoned India's envoy to Dhaka on Tuesday, hours after closing its visa and consular office in Tripura, following a security incident on the 3rd of December. Tensions between both countries are high amid violence against Hindu minorities in Bangladesh. Now, Dhaka summoned the Indian High Commissioner to express quote-unquote concerns about the breach of security in Agartala. Around 50 people had participated in a massive protest against the arrest of Hindu monk Chinmoy Krishnadas there. Verma, in turn, upheld the importance of a broader, multi-dimensional relationship between the two nations, stressing such ties can't be reduced to a single issue. Israel has threatened to return to war in Lebanon if its truce with Hezbollah collapses. Israel said this time its attacks would go deeper and target the Lebanese state itself after the deadliest day since the ceasefire was agreed last week. In its strongest threat since the truce was agreed to end 14 months of war with Hezbollah, Israel said it would hold Lebanon responsible for failing to disarm militants who violate the ceasefire. Russian drones have struck critical infrastructure in Ukraine's western Ternopil and Rivne regions overnight, the Ukrainian Air Force has said. The attack left part of the city of Ternopil without electricity a week after Moscow's strikes cut much power too of the city and its surrounding region. Ukraine on Tuesday blasted an agreement struck 30 years ago, under which it gave up nuclear weapons in exchange for security assurances that never materialized. Ukraine is making a concerted push for an invitation to join the NATO alliance. Kiev is desperately calling for robust security guarantees to protect it from renewed Russian aggression as Trump's return to the White House raises fears of a rapidly struck settlement to the war that would leave it exposed. Syrian and Russian warplanes have launched concentrated air and missile strikes on Idlib. The Syrian Defense Ministry has confirmed killing and wounding dozens of terrorists and destroying their vehicles and weapons. United Nations Security Council members continue to discuss the ongoing crisis in Syria. The 13-year civil war in Syria has roared back into prominence with the rebels' surprise capture of Aleppo. Insurgents led by the jihadi group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham launched the two-pronged attack on Aleppo last week. The Syrian military and its foreign allies have rushed reinforcements and launched airstrikes as they attempted to stall their momentum. Democrat Adam Gray has won the U.S. House election in California's 13th congressional district, unseating Republican John Duarte. Gray's win in the Farm Belt seat that cuts through 5 counties means Republicans have won 220 House seats this election cycle, with Democrats holding just 215 seats. Gray won by a margin of less than 200 votes, with election officials reporting all ballots had been counted. President-elect Donald Trump's pick to lead the Drug Enforcement Administration abruptly withdrew his name from consideration days after being chosen. Chad Chronister said in a post on X that he made the decision as the gravity of this very important responsibility set in. He did not cite a reason for his withdrawal other than concluding he wanted to continue in his current role as a sheriff in Florida. On its 61st flight, India's Workhorse rocket has been tasked by the European Space Agency to launch 2 satellites that will mimic the total solar eclipse through precision formation flying. The satellites, named Proba 3, will lift off from Andhra Pradesh's Sriharikota today at 4:08 p.m. Indian Standard Time. In his first statement to Parliament since India and China reached an agreement in October, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said the conclusion of disengagement has set Delhi-Beijing ties in the direction of some improvement. Jaishankar said in a detailed statement in the Lok Sabha, recent developments that reflect our continuous diplomatic engagement have set our ties in the direction of some improvement. Listen in to what he said.
The House is aware that our ties have been abnormal since 2020, when peace and tranquility in the border areas were disturbed as a result of Chinese actions. India and China have held talks for multiple decades to resolve the boundary issue. While there is a line of actual control, LAC, it does not have a common understanding in some areas. We remain committed to engaging with China through bilateral discussions to arrive at a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable framework for a boundary settlement.
Philippine officials say that Chinese Coast Guard vessels fired water cannons, blocked and sideswiped a patrol vehicle in a disputed shoal in the South China Sea. Philippine Coast Guard said that several Chinese Coast Guard and Navy ships approached Philippine vessel and staged quote-unquote aggressive actions after dawn. There was no immediate comment from the Chinese officials. Street protests in Tbilisi continued for a 5th night as demonstrators and riot police exchanged fireworks and tear gas. Water cannons were used to disperse the protesters. In footage, cops were seen detaining a protester. Thousands of demonstrators converged on Parliament again overnight, wearing gas masks and using homemade shields to deflect police tear gas canisters. Protesters continue to vent outrage over the ruling party's decision to suspend negotiations on joining the European Union. The long-running gang and racketeering trial that led Atlanta rapper Young Thug to plead guilty in October ended on Tuesday. The last 2 defendants were found not guilty of racketeering. murder, and gang-related charges. Demont Kendrick, who raps as Yak Gotti, was acquitted of all charges. Meanwhile, Shannon Stillwell was found guilty only of gun possession. The verdicts come nearly 2 years after the jury selection began and 1 year after opening statements in a trial plagued with problems. The Emir of Qatar kicked off a state visit to Britain on Tuesday. He enjoyed a private lunch at the Buckingham Palace. King Charles and Qatar's Emir also viewed the royal collection items related to Qatar. The Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, granted Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani and his wife earlier in the day. The couples then travelled to Horse Guards Parade in central London, where King Charles III formally welcomed the Emir and Sheikh Jawahar to Britain. Juan Carlos Izaza, Managing Director of the Latin American Information Alliance, called for greater collaboration among media organizations in the Global South. He emphasized the potential to address shared challenges and enhance cultural exchange, particularly in today's divided world.
I know about other regions in the world and about similar organizations in Africa, in Asia Pacific, in the Pacific Islands. And I know that they also cooperate, but I think that there is a work to do to integrate the regions. You know, I think that by now the regions collaborate within the same region. The Africans collaborate with the Africans. The Asia Pacific countries collaborate within their own region. But I think that there is still a big effort to integrate the whole southern countries.